Hey everyone, P. McGee here with another draft battle analysis video. As requested on the Discord, we're going to take a look at a battle between the Houston Zero Aura, which is Aggie, and then the Sao Paulo Scissors, which is Dell. This match will ultimately be won by Dell, very much on the defensive play of IG Slash, and that's kind of what we want to look at here is ways to win when you don't have good offensive type matchups. So where you can't just come in and spam a move and just do lots of damage because the opponent has good enough answers to whatever offensive attack you want to throw at them. Their defensive checks are just too much to break with those offensive attacks, so you have to find new ways to get around them. And so for Dell here, this is going to come very strongly on the play of the IG Slash with the Toxic Stall. Because if you look at the team that Aggie brought, IG Slash on paper has a pretty bad matchup. Darmanitan, IG Slash isn't going to beat one-on-one as both offensive mons. Dragonite very often has Earthquake, which it does in this match. Also very bad for IG Slash. Quagsire has both Earth Power, Earthquake, and other ways to put pressure on IG Slash. Also unaware, so IG Slash couldn't even set up to try to break it. Slowbro is fat enough it could survive a lot of attacks and KO back with something like Flamethrower. And then Miltank has immunity from the Ghost, and then it's just neutral damage from the Steel, and has options like High Horsepower, Earthquake, where it could, again, KO the IG Slash. So on paper, it seems like this IG Slash has a really, really bad matchup, and it's going to have a hard time doing anything offensively. And so Dell does a really, really smart thing, which is to lean into the Toxic Style ability of the IG Slash and make do with it without having great type matchups. It really does a great job this match at walling out everything, despite most of the things that are being thrown at it being super effective damage. And then he's got some good support pieces to kind of help that succeed. Things like Wheezing we'll see here, and Rhydon. A little bit of offensive pressure with Cinderace and Diggersby, and then there is a Sharpedo in the back that never actually sees action. But this game is very much won on defensive play from a Mon that did not have a good defensive or offensive type matchup. And so I really want to highlight the play by Dell here in pulling through and making the most out of that situation. We're going to play it on slow for now. So the leadoffs for this match are pretty much identical. Both options are going to go for basically the Rock Setter turn one. Dell's going to actually put them up while Aggie is fishing for a paralysis. He won't get it. 30% chance it happens. Rhydon really doesn't care about Body Slam. It's just Eviolite. Does nothing. So he gets his rocks up for turn one. Really good play. And then he makes a really, really smart switch into the IG Slash, because if Aggie wants to keep spamming Body Slam, IG Slash doesn't care. If he wants to put up rocks, IG Slash doesn't really care. If he wants to throw Toxic, again, IG Slash doesn't care. Doesn't really care about a lot of the things that Miltank can do to it, unless Miltank is running the coverage for it. And so he comes in very smartly on this, and then it's just a free substitute for him, which he takes full advantage of. And so again, on paper, it looks like, oh no, IG Slash is about to get forced out because Quagsire has the type matchup to beat an IG Slash, and it looks bad. But IG Slash is just going to get going with the Toxic Stall immediately. Yes, Earth Power will break. And then so Dell's in a spot here where he could click King Shield, get a little more health back, stall an extra turn. It's kind of a 50-50 call. If he does that and he just keeps, and then Aggie hard switches out, then he's lost momentum. He's not behind a sub anymore. He just kind of gets forced out of the field. So he makes a 50-50 call, goes for a sub again. Not a bad play at all, because what ends up happening here is Aggie goes for the Scald, very likely predicting that he was going to switch into Wheezing to get immunity from the Earth Power. And so Aggie went for a call that ended up being wrong. IG Slash was able to wall this Scald. Really big deal for him, because now he gets an extra turn behind it, and he can just click King Shield, or he can go for an attack. And so very safe King Shield here. Not much Quagsire can do about it. He's kind of forced to click Earth Power at this point. Anyway, Dell gets a free Shadow Ball here, which is going to end up KOing the Quagsire with the addition of the toxic damage. And then all he loses for it is the sub. And so all in all, IG Slash has removed Quagsire, one of Aggie's better defensive counters to a lot of this team, and IG Slash has lost 19% of health. And it was just a really, really good start for him. So in 6 turns, he gets rid of one of the hardest to deal with defensive checks that could really repel a lot of his team. It's off the field and out of the game. And then I really want to highlight this turn 8, because it looks like Dell makes a misplay here, but he actually makes a really, really smart call based off of what happened week 1 with the Darmanitan. So in week 1, Aggie tricks his Choice Scarf onto a Necrozma that was setting up, and it ultimately kills the Necrozma setup and helps Aggie win that game because he gets it locked into a move. And so the thing about King's Shield is King's Shield does not protect from something like Trick. Trick or Status would still happen. So if he goes for a Trick here and he tries to King's Shield, he will still be tricked that item. And so it looks like a misplay, not just clicking King's Shield and scouting out what the Darmanitan wants to do, but if the Darmanitan actually tricks on this turn, then Dell loses his best defensive stall piece that he's been making good work with so far in this match. So Dell does a really, really good job of switching out into Rhydon, who doesn't care about any of the options that Darmanitan is going to really throw at it. It ultimately goes for Earthquake, which is fine enough. No loss for Dell switching out. Rhydon's already done what its most important thing was, which is getting rocks up early. You know, there's no stack Attacka in this match, so Rhydon doesn't have that really good matchup it was looking for. So Rhydon's kind of just hanging around on borrowed time. If it gets a chance at Slowbro, it'll probably take it, but it's not really built for most of what Aggie has brought in this match. Anyway, he can see right here, Dell can, that obviously this Darmanitan's not going to stay in. It would die. It would not KO the Rhydon. It would just die to whatever stab attack that Dell goes for. So he knows this has to switch out, and there's only a couple of switch out options that are safe. The most logical and obvious one being Bulu. Rhydon doesn't really have anything to do a ton to the Bulu except for the Toxic, which is what he's going to go for right here. Really smart predictive Toxic. Bulu was the most obvious switch in. He gets it. And so now Bulu's poisoned, and again on a limited timer, even though Aggie does have Heal Bell and he will do things to fix Pokemon in the match, it just kind of limits the impact that Bulu can have one-on-one because he can't hang around with Toxic, whereas Dell has some stall pieces with the Weezing and the IG Slash to kind of keep it lively and around. Anyway, Miltank comes back into play here. Sludge Bomb gets a really nice poison. And so what's very, very clear when you get a poison like this on the Miltank is it's probably going to Heal Bell. It doesn't really have the defensive or the offensive pieces to pressure out this Weezing. We've seen Body Slam, we've seen Stealth Rock. We're going to assume it has Milk Drink because it's a Miltank. And then it's just a question of whether he carries a coverage move or he carries Heal Bell. And we're going to learn on this next turn that it is Heal Bell. But this gives Dell, again, another free switch into the defensive piece that's just going to really wall Aggie out, which is the Aegislash. I'm sorry. He goes into the Cinderace first just to try to put offensive pressure. So this is the interesting thing about this match is that most of the time Dell tries to generate offensive pressure. It doesn't actually pan out. Almost all of the success Dell has in this match is just purely from defensive posturing. Because Cinderace is going to go for a high jump kick here. Aggie's going to call it, and the Slowbro is going to take negligible damage and force the Cinderace right back out. So he doesn't really gain a lot from this offensive pressure. Whereas if he had brought in Aegislash right here, it would have been free. Because we're going to learn later in this match that Miltank's last move is Milk Drink, which means Miltank literally has no way of doing anything to the Aegislash. So the Aegislash comes in for free every time on the Miltank. And there's just nothing that Aggie can do about that other than predictively switch out. And so that's something that Dell will abuse in this match. Anyway, the high jump kick's not going to do anything here. Slowbro just literally doesn't care. It's a quad resist. It's a defensive-looking Slowbro. You know, he's already back to pretty much full health. Cinderace is forced out. Gets a U-turn for a little bit of chip, but you can already see how fat this thing is. Diggersby is a good spring in right here because he only has two safe switch-ins on Diggersby, which is the Tapu Bulu and the Dragonite. And so Dell carries a really important move here. It's just good prep on his part. Is high horsepower. High horsepower doesn't get negated by the grassy terrain, so it's going to do the same amount of damage it always does. And with the huge power boost, it does a really sizable amount of damage to this Bulu. Obviously, Diggersby can't stay in on a Bulu. No reason to do that. So it's going to be a really good predictive switch out into Cinderace, which has good offensive momentum. Bulu can't really pressure the Cinderace all that well. And so this is just now a free Pyro Ball because Aggie doesn't have a good switch out. So obviously that doesn't kill it. This is actually a nice spot for Dell to be in. So Dell's going to do a really smart thing on this next turn. There's no reason to go for a Pyro Ball here. If he switches out, you know, you're not going to kill whatever comes in with the Pyro Ball. You can very safely U-turn in front of this. And so if the Bulu stays in, the Bulu will go down to the U-turn and you can control momentum, bring in a good defensive piece. or it switches, or the Bulu switches out, and you can come in with something better, like I think it'll be IG Slash in a second here on the predictive U-turn. Yeah, so Dragonite comes in. U-turn's great. Oh, no, he doesn't. I actually apologize. I guess that was later in the match. So he Powerballs here. U-turn was the better call because you get to generate momentum. You could have come straight in with Weezing, because now what you've done is you're giving this Dragonite a turn to do something. When if you had U-turned and came in with Weezing, Dragonite would have been immediately forced out. Or if you came in with Sharpedo, Dragonite would have been immediately forced out, because I believe this is special attacking Sharpedo with Ice Beam specifically for Dragonite. And now that the multi-scale has been broken, Dragonite is super vulnerable to that attack. But it was just a missed opportunity to U-turn out, continue momentum, and have it. Because now he just does it the next turn. All he really gained for it was 10% of damage from the Pyro Ball, when all you really care about doing to the Dragonite when it's at multi-scale is just breaking the 100% mark so that the multi-scale is out of play. So it was something where you should have seen the Dragonite coming in. The U-turn in front of Bulu was just a really safe play, and it would have given him some good momentum in this match. But Weezing's the right bring in here. It just, he gets a turn to Dragon Dance, and that's just not what you want to see. So this could have gone really badly for Dell here if the flinch had happened. You know, we saw what Dragonite did in the most recent match with Iron Head, but it doesn't happen. He gets the Will-O-Wisp, really important, because it limits the potency of the Dragonite now. Dragonite doesn't really have the offensive pressure anymore that it wanted. And so he's able to come in with, who does he come in with? He's able to come in with Rhydon, which is the safest play, because if it has Earthquake or Iron Head, that's aren't going to break an EV-Light Rhydon. So it's just good pressure to exert on this. Ice Punch, safe play in case he decided to attack. Make sure that the Dragonite goes down. So this is where he safely switches into the IG Slash. He's basically feeling pretty confident at this point that the last attack on the Miltank is going to be Milk Drink. And so this means it's just going to be a free substitute for IG Slash, and he's going to take full advantage of that right here. So he'll get behind the substitute. There's just nothing Miltank can do other than Heal Bell, which again is a smart thing to do. Get Bulu back to being able to be usable, make Dragonite no longer hurt by that burn. But Aegislash is just sitting behind this, and it's a pretty free Toxic, although he does smartly come in with a Slowbro to prevent that. Slowbro is kind of in a spot here where it needed to attack and try to break this sub, because he just doesn't have an answer to Aegislash behind this sub, and Aegislash is going to outspeed. So he'll try to calm mind here, but the damage from the Shadow Ball is just too much that he can't stay in. And so Dell can just spam Shadow Ball again. The only thing that can come in on the Shadow Ball is the Miltank, but the Miltank can't even pressure the Aegislash, so he can just go right back to Toxic spamming. Because what is this Miltank going to do? Or he can, and I think this is what he does here actually to get the KO. Either this turn or next, he's going to predictively call that the Miltank can't actually sit in, because the Miltank, again, it's shown all 4 moves. He knows the Miltank can't actually do anything. So he can just basically spam Shadow Ball, and then eventually something's going to come in and eat the Shadow Ball, which will be the Slowbro, and it will go down. Because the Toxic misses here, but then he's just going to predictively Shadow Ball, expecting the Miltank to switch back out into Slowbro. He gets the call right, and then Slowbro goes right down and is out of this game. Which means now Toxic is entirely and fully free, and there's just nothing that Aggie can do about that anymore. And so even though all 3 of the offensive pieces left have good matchups against the Aegislash is just going to sit here and wall. I think on that turn, he probably, actually, no, he was smart enough just to go straight for the Shadow Ball. It doesn't really make much of a difference. You could have scouted for the Flare Blitz, but Aggie was smart enough just to click Earthquake, because he knows if he King Shields, the Flare Blitz is in a lot of trouble. The Earthquake is not affected by the King Shield, so it was just safer to Earthquake. Surprisingly, the Darmanitan actually survives. And so now Aggie does a smart thing. He knows he's no longer worried about Trick, because it's already revealed the move it's going to be. Even though it's only 1%, might as well get that Aegisplash's 1% back, because you never know if it's going to be meaningful or not. It just also burns a PP on Darmanitan, so it's just buying a turn, kind of playing it out a little bit, seeing what happens. Darmanitan can't leave the field anymore because those rocks will kill it on next entry, so Darmanitan's kind of stuck playing the rest of this out. But Diggersby's going to come in, survive the Earthquake because it's not stab, and then this is where Diggersby does a really good U-turn, because it's just super safe to U-turn on this now and go right back into Aegislash, because there's just no answers to it. And the best one, Darmanitan, is now out of the match, because Bulu only has a few percentage points left. Dragonite needs to set up here. I do want to call out this next turn, though, because this was really, really smart heads-up play by Dell. So he's poisoned the Dragonite now, and he knows that the Earthquake won't KO the Aegislash, barring a crit. So the Dragonite's in a spot here where it's going to expect Dell to go for a King Shield here, and so Aggie's going to try to predictively Dragon Dance. But Dell realizes that if he Shadow Balls here and then King Shield, that the Dragonite is going to die. If he tries to King Shield now and the Dragonite sets up, then he can KO the Aegislash with Earthquake. So it's a really smart heads-up play that coming up by Dell to understand what Aggie's options were, and that Shadow Ball was the best option for him. Because he gets the Shadow Ball, it puts Dragonite low enough that this Shadow Ball plus this toxic damage plus the next turn of toxic damage will KO it. So he's just going to click King Shield here, and then that's it for Dragonite. And that really does end this game right here, because now Aggie just has nothing left to really break this with. I mean, this Tapu Bulu is at 23%. It's just going to die to Shadow Ball. There's nothing it can really do. So it comes in. It doesn't really have any way to do anything. And he pulls it out. Kind of a misplay because it dies to rocks on entry. So it was just a wasted switch out. But at this point in the game, it didn't really matter. He can click Substitute here. It doesn't really matter what Dell does. He can basically just spam Toxic at this point. There's nothing Miltank can do because Bulu's gone on entry. And that's game. So we're just going to go really fast through the rest of this. Because eventually Aggie's kind enough to just let this Toxic wear it out. He doesn't try to force the Heal Bell stall off. There's nothing to be gained by it. Miltank's physically incapable of doing anything to the Aegislash. So it's just kind of a stall out. Overall, Aggie had some things that were going to cause trouble for Dell. Dell didn't have a way to exert offensive pressure with Aegislash. So even though Aegislash has one of the scariest attacks, if you want to put Specs or Band on it, it can do crazy amounts of damage. There's just a lot of answers on Aggie's team that prevent that from being effective. And Aegislash, from a defensive point of view, also looks like it has a really, really bad matchup because even though Quagsire is not offensive, it can't really handle Earth Power from Quagsire. It can't set up in front of Quagsire. Miltank can threaten it out with high horsepower if it wants to run that. Darmanitan can threaten it out with Earthquake or Flare Blitz. Slowbro has options. Dragonite has options. He's already run a Darkest Lariat Bulu this season, so Bulu has options to address it. All in all, there's just a lot of ways that Aegislash could have normally been pressured out, but he does a really good job here of understanding where it can come in defensively and how to exert some Toxic Stall. So even though Aegislash never at any point had a good type matchup except for the Shadow Balls on Slowbro, it was really able to win this game and just break Aggie's team piece by piece because Aggie didn't have a good way of getting around the King Shield sub-stalling. Very common set, mostly with Aegislash, but even so, it's still hard to prep for because it's just really potent if you know how to bring it in at the right moments and exert good pressure with it. Because he saw windows with the Miltank who was incapable of exerting pressure, and then the Quagsire he got a really good call on to double down on the substitute and make a good play with that. And then at that point, he just started breaking pieces so that Aggie no longer had good answers, and he couldn't do anything with that Miltank. And the Miltank obviously came to hinder him because that was just a free entry for Aegislash to again set up and continue to do it. Because every time Aegislash got behind that sub, it basically got a KO or it crippled something beyond repair. And so overall, just a really good game from the Aegislash. Decent supportive defensive work from the Rhydon and the Galarian Weezing, and then small amounts of offensive pressure from the Diggersby and Cinderace. But this was really only defensive play that Dell won on. The Cinderace actually never did anything productive on offense other than mostly breaking the Bulu, but it didn't even KO the Bulu. And the Diggersby got, I think it was like a 3% or something like that, 8% kill on a U-turn on the Darmanitan, and that was the extent of his offensive pressure. The rest was just one on the defensive end. And so he made good work at breaking Aggie despite not having great offensive pieces that would normally do it. He just kind of Toxic stalled his way through it. So yeah, that was that match. I hope you found it somewhat insightful about how you can win a game if you don't have the right offensive pieces or you're not confident your offensive pieces can break their defensive core. Quagsire, Slowbro, Miltank is a really hard to break defensive core. Aggie's team in general is just really thick defensively, but every team is generally prone to Toxic Stall. And even though he had Heal Ball on the team, Heal Ball only has 8 uses. And he just couldn't keep Miltank 1v1 against the IG Slash because Miltank couldn't damage it, and then he could just keep toxic stalling the Miltank. So overall, just a really good matchup for Dell defensively, and he made really good work with the IG Slash. So awesome. Thanks, guys.